What is your will, my master?
Hey, what's up, Zach? Quick demo video for you. May not be too quick, but for your LGT Kylo. Um, as you know, you sent this to me. Well, I offered to take it from you to fix it. It was recently in one of your videos, not in a good way, but it's all fixed now. I'm not going to go hard on on the previous install. I am going to go in depth though because there were a lot of things that I changed or I fixed, and then also Cole Weathers was asking me how I approached the Quillions because this, to get some decent blade depth uh, on your main blade, which you did not have before when it came to me. There was a trick that I had to do in order to get that down that deep. So, anyways, this is installed with a Proffie. I did reuse the Proffie board that it had in it, but I have to replace everything else. So there were some different some lit pixel connectors used, which wasn't bad, right? It was fine. It's just not the ones I use. But the way that they were put in here was a little bit iffy. So on your Quillions, I put CC sabers in here, by the way. I've just put 3 sets of them in here. Um, on your Quillions, there was a piece of blade stock that was behind each of the PCBs, and then the PCBs just sat right on top of them, which isn't too bad, but the PCBs had long pins, something that I don't like to use at all because they tend to break if you don't have the lens cover, or if your PCB holder isn't recessed enough. So I actually have, it's going to be hard to see that in the light, but maybe you can see it. These have holders, so the PCBs are sitting in their own 3D printed holders, and they are recessed into the holder far enough to where only the tips of the pins are sticking out. So when you take your Quillions and you shove them in there, you're not stressing out the pins. So before, when you had those long pins in there, if you were to shove these in there too hard, you could bend those pins, or you could damage the springs in them. So I like to use short pins, and then I also use a holder so that those LEDs and the undersides of those pins don't get mashed up with your blade. I originally had you send me these because I needed to measure the depth to see, how far I needed to put those holders in so that these could sit in all the way. But while I was doing that, I noticed that these Quillions they're just a little too small in diameter for your side blade holders here. I didn't know quite what to do with this because they're already made. This is something that I hate to do, but I talked to you about it. I put a little bit of clear masking tape on each one to build up that diameter a little bit on each of these so that they sit inside your saber correctly, and they do that now. Yeah, so that's what I did with those. Back to the saber. How you get to everything is what you want to do is you want to take this red wire off here and then slide it through this top clamp just like that, and then you can unscrew this entire handle. Getting back to the Quillions though, because like I'm all over the place on this guy, I'll try to work my way from top to bottom. So the blade material that those old ones were sitting on, they were just kind of shoved in there, and then they were glued. So I spent some time busting those out of there, and then went back and I retapped this hole here, but on both sides. My fingers are in the way. You can see like this one right here and this one right here. There were holes already here, but I retapped them because they were filled with some glue or something. And then these are what's holding your PCB holders in. So uh, I retap these, and then I retap these on the outside for blade holders, and these are all 832 set screws that I put in here because they were missing. So we got those. You got something to hold your blade. I came in here, right here, and added a set screw. I think you might have had one already, but I lost it, or maybe it wasn't in there. I don't know, but I had plenty. So I put a set screw in here for a blade retention, and then we'll get back to how I wired the Quillions here in a minute. But anyway, here's your chassis. So this did have a red chassis. I have some red PLA. I thought it went well with the Kylo Saber. So I made this chassis out of red material. You're not going to be able to see it very well, but it does say LGT Kylo over here in the Sith text, and then you know, it says Solo Sabers over here for me in Arabish, and then there's just some Greeblies that I put on here. Now this does have a 28 millimeter Smugglers Outpost Elite speaker. The last one that you had, it was a 28 millimeter also, but it wasn't a Smugglers Outpost, and these are the best 28s in my opinion. So I put that in there and got rid of the other one. It was held in, not ideally. For anybody who wants to watch that video that Zach put up, he already explained it in detail. But this one sits in here nice. It's glued in. It's not going anywhere. It does have removable battery setup. So spring side is your negative, and then you know this is a battery or this is a wire channel here. So for all the wires for your speaker and this positive terminal, I cover them in shrink tube, and they sit inside of its own channel. They're neatly in. It's neat in there, and it's out of the way. You got your Proffie board right here. This saber is a little bit weird when it comes to being able to have board access. So the board had to be recessed into the hilt a little bit. And then if you ever need to get to your SD card and your micro USB, you can pop it up from here. Just be super careful. I try to put that board down enough to where you can pop it up without lifting the chassis, or I'm sorry, without moving the chassis. But I also left enough wire slack to where if you want to come over here, this is your blade retention, or I'm sorry, your chassis retention, which you didn't have before. You can loosen that guy, and you can slide this out a little bit, do what you need to do, and then slide it back in. Don't slide it out too much though, just maybe half inch or less, and that's all you'd ever need. And I've actually lifted the board from right here, so you should be able to do that too. But the option's there in case you know the other way makes you feel more comfortable. So how I had to wire this, and then your switches right here. It's a 2-button setup, right? So that top switch is your activation. This bottom switch right here is your auxiliary. Those line up correctly. The switches are in the chassis, and then your main PCB holder is part of the chassis, which is the same as what it was before. But before you had, you know, you had about a 1/4 inch of blade depth, maybe. You know, it was pretty bad. I dropped this down and gave you, you know, just is it's about 1.12 inches worth of blade depth in there, so that's plenty to hold a blade. It's more than a thin neck saber typically, but it's more than enough to hold a 1-inch diameter blade solidly. Now for the quillions, Cole. How I had to do this, if you can see in there, my light is terrible, but you did see from the pictures, you can see that gap, that little cut in my chassis there. I actually have one here. I printed one rev and it didn't quite work out right, so then I had to go back and I printed a different one. But if you look in here, you can see those 2 cutouts. There's one on that side, and there's one on that side, and that's where the main PCB sits down in here. These are for the wires for the side quillions. But I dropped this main PCB down so far, you know, it's probably down. It's down about right here. So it's almost right, you know, I mean, it's underneath these 2 quillions right here. It's sitting down here somewhere. So I had to wire my main PCB last. So I put in my side quillions, and you know, I got my wire. They're pre-wired to the PCBs. They're sticking out. They're coming out this way. I put my chassis in. I wire everything, but I did not put my main PCB here in until last, right? So I got everything wired, and then I left that out so that I could slide this chassis forward, and I could have these 2 grooves right here. They're just kind of pockets for the side quillion wires, right? So that I can come up here, slide this in, and then I tuck those wires in with my finger down inside that chassis. And then the last thing I do is I come in here with this main one, I push it down, and I glue it down to the chassis piece, and it pushes all those wires underneath it. I hope that makes sense. If if you happen to be doing one and you need some help, let me know. I will try to explain that better. It makes sense to me, but I did it right. So it's not going to show up in the light very well. You can just barely see over on this side, that group of wires coming over here to the side one, but they're ducked down underneath that main PCB so they don't get in the way of the blade. That's how I approached trying to get the maximum amount of blade depth here as I could. And it worked out pretty well. I didn't have any problems. I didn't have any problems doing that. Let's throw a battery in this guy. Now, you sent me this battery, this Saber Studio or Saberstead ID. I don't know. I'm not going to use it. I'm afraid of it. I've never seen it before. I'm going to send it back with you. I'm sure it's fine. I'm just going to use my key powers that I'm used to because I work so hard on this guy that I don't want any variables that I'm not familiar with, right? So I'm going to throw a battery in here.
I'll show you the dark side.
So that snaps in there exactly like it should. The battery cradle is the shape of a battery. It's circular. The other one that you had looked like it was almost fit for a keystone, but it was too small for a keystone. I just think he may not be at the point where he's modeling, in that way, or he's just doing something that works for him, which is no problem. I used to do square battery holders when I first started modeling until I figured out how to put the circular piece in there. But anyway, this is the shape of the battery. We'll put the handle on. I'm trying hard to remain subjective. Like I actually reached out to the guy and wanted to talk to him a little bit about this, but he didn't want to have anything to do with that. So that's fine, whatever. Different people go in different ways, and it's really you know not my concern anymore. But anyway, so I screwed that handle on. I ran that wire back through that clip, and then I just kind of tucked it in there. You can do whatever you want. So you do have motion controls, right? So you see all your LEDs firing up like they should. Auxiliary down here. Twist off. Or you can come over here and you can hit activation. And you do have a delayed on some of these Kylos, right? Or on all the Kylos, really, I gave you a delayed ignition, so your main blade will go off before your side blade. So before we put the blades in, if I held it like this to where you could see both the side and the front, you'll notice that the side fires off after. Just like that. Now we'll put all the blades in. I'll be right back. All right, so it takes a little bit to get all these blades in, but that's all right. Once you got them all in, right? So these two are yours. This is just my test blade. We'll go to another one.
Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren. General Krill.
So this is the one, I don't know if it's going to pick up well on camera. This is the one where you wanted the main blade green and the side blades blue, which they are. I hope that it's picking up. This is pink. Again, I'm not sure if it's picking up well on camera.
Empress Palpatine. Just a simple wonder.
This one's purple. You want it all purple for this guy.
Kylo Ren. Kylo
I
Ren.
think we might be back at the beginning. So I'm going to take these blades out real quick. Everything's firing up and doing exactly as it should. And, there's lots of blade depth here in this main blade. That's why, this saber's pretty heavy, and that's why I can take this thing and I can shake it like that and just hold the blade, and everything is perfectly straight like it should be, right? Just like that. So I'll be back. I'm going to take these blades out. Okay, so we got those blades out. To get the battery out, super simple, just what we did before. Of course, we'll bring that wire out and then we'll just untwist this guy. Slide this out, and then from the positive side of the battery by the speaker, you should be able to take your finger and pop the battery out just like that. So that's pretty much your saber. Let me know if you got any questions on this, and if not, I will package this out and get it out to you. I hope today, but at the very latest it will be tomorrow. All right, thanks.